Hello class, and welcome to our second module on teamwork. This time today we'll be talking about team charters. And so I have written down here coffee plus rhetoric equals a powerful combination. And so when I use rhetoric, I think about the strategic use of language to accomplish discovery and change. And so to me, rhetoric is magical because having a word and knowing when to use it can be a difference maker in one version of reality versus another. And so you already know one new word in your vocabulary, that of layered writing. And so make sure you're conjuring up layered writing in your team meetings so that it recalls in your peers this best practice we've taught, and that it can ignite that type of thinking and testing out the process in your team as you go forward. And so if you start to feel perhaps that, oh, it looks like we're doing a divide and conquer approach here, conjure that word, use the rhetoric to persuade others to try the layered approach. So with that said, let's take a look at what we'll be covering in this next mini module. So I'm going to start by giving you a big picture. It says modules 1 through 3. The third one isn't part of this class, but I'll briefly describe it for you here just to give you some context. Then we'll be talking about the what and the why of team charters, followed by the actual module on team charters. And then it says breakout. I've left it up here. Even though this is asynchronous, I'm leaving the prompt here to encourage you to leave this meeting by contacting your team to get started on the team charter. So let's look at that big picture first. Oop. Gonna make myself a little smaller here. I forgot to do that. Okay, there I am. So let's look at the big picture, how everything fits together. One way to think about it is that team charters are at the center of it all. What is it? It's teamwork. And so in our last module, we learned about methods for collaborative writing. There's the face-to-face, kind of the default when people are able to meet face-to-face. The divide and conquer, I would say the default when student teams meet virtually. And then the best practice, a little more effort, but it has higher quality, is the layered approach. And as I mentioned last lecture, it's actually more efficient than the divide and conquer because you don't have to redo the work. So methods for leadership, there are generally 3. An instructor can assign a leader, peers within the team can assign, or there's a rotation model where the designated leader rotates either within team sessions or at the start of each team session when they begin. And so the point is to have one of these known as opposed to kind of an ad hoc every time you meet. It's not clear. If that's kind of the program you want to facilitate your teamwork in, try advocating for a clear rotational model so that it's clear who's in charge and what role people are playing on that team. So if we have methods for collaborative writing, methods for leadership, and then you might also be you could picture another column that says methods for design thinking, methods for iteration, all sorts of columns you can add. At the center of it is this notion of team charters, and so that's what we'll be talking about today. I would say the 2 methods columns are fairly theoretical, kind of big picture. Team charters is really an effort to make it practical for you as students how to implement these seemingly theoretical notions into your actual teamwork. So first, let's start off with the what and why by looking at student voices of team charters. So rather than me starting with the definition of what a team charter is, here's how students in previous classes I've had have understood them. So Harry noted that it's a formal written document. Rochelle stated that it's a written argument for a team. And so I like these 2 things in red because it makes it quite clear the team charter is something formal and it's written, and then Rachel adds onto it that it's a written argument. And so you might not often think about charters or procedural documents of any sort as arguments, but that's actually what the charter is doing. It's creating a set of arguments about particular things that the group decides together in its creation. So why should teams use a formal written document? It sounds kind of difficult to do, and maybe you're really excited about the content and you just want to jump right into the work of your project. So why take the time to make a charter? So Meka pointed out that it establishes operating procedures to maximize team performance and potential. Kelton observed that it reduces the time it takes for a team to start functioning effectively, as best practices are found immediately. And by found, he really means they're named immediately. And so by creating a team charter together, you set aside a dedicated space to create all the procedures and operations of your team so that you can actually do the fun stuff of working on the material of your project and have a place to go when issues arise. And so it's not just about maximizing performance and getting started effectively and functionally immediately, but it's also about creating a space to kind of work through definitions, goals, and purposes early on in the process so that they don't show up later and you realize, oh, I thought we were working on X and student over here thought we were working on Y, and now we kind of have to work through this together, but we only have a day to do so. So team charters are a way to kind of head that off at the pass. All right, so let's take a look at the kind of formal instruction for team charters. All right, so I have written up here genre team charters, and it's just a way to think about this document that you're engaging with. So genre is a term to describe a recurring socio-rhetorical need. So what that means is you might normally think of genres in terms of movies or books. So there's horror films, there's comedies, there's actions. And the reason why genres exist is because there's a recurring need from an audience to see content that they're looking for. And so comedies exist because there's a recurring need for people to laugh. Horror films exist because there's a recurring need for people to maybe feel that sense of tension, and then also the release within a short amount of time. And so you can notice that if you're watching a film that's branded as a comedy, but it turns out to be an action movie, there's no laughing, even though it could be a great action movie, you're still disappointed. That's not because it was a failure in terms of film, but because it was a failure in terms of the genre. And so genres are very powerful in that they bring these expectations as part of kind of working with them. So another genre is a resume. You can think about all the different features of a resume that people are looking to see, that if you don't include them, you might be thinking you're creative, but you're actually not fulfilling the socio-rhetorical need that's there. So what we need to think about with the word genre in place of team charters is that there's some sort of social rhetorical need associated with them. It's not necessarily a space to be creative in creating your version of a team charter, but actually sticking to what the needs are for people to use team charters. And so we can break down genres in terms of two features, content and form. And this is the way I'm going to teach team charters for you in this class, is by looking at the content as well as the form that comprise this genre. And so just one little visual here to maybe help kind of bring those things together. We can think about those top three threads as maybe the content, and the bottom three is form, and they kind of get united, content and form, into this thread that is the team charter working there. So in the next few slides, I'll be walking through kind of content features of team charters and formal features of team charters. The takeaway is that they're not kind of separate elements, but they get intertwined together. All right, so you're probably pretty anxious to see what I mean by these two elements. So as a rhetorical genre, it's made up of content and form. In terms of content, what do team charters have in them? Well, they provide focus and direction, they establish boundaries, and they establish the operational plan and method, how work is going to get done. And it includes a centralized resource for team info. So one way to think about it is it's like the syllabus or the course canvas for your team that you go to when you're not sure what you're supposed to be doing, or maybe starting off each team session to make sure you're following along with the workload. Formally, and you can actually think about these as headers within the document. So there's an objective statement, there's members as well as the roles that those members have in the team, deliverables and deadlines, reporting plan and responsibilities, as well as communication boundaries, work operations, and leadership. And this next one can often be forgotten, but I found it very useful in classroom settings, is resources and support. So this could be links to things like the course syllabus, a team GitHub if you're using that. Maybe there's sort of Google Doc or Google Drive or Box folder. Those can all be listed there so that it can be kind of your one point waypoint into those recurring documents that a team needs. All right, so we'll look into best practices for writing team charters in the next kind of third of this lecture, but just before I move on, the takeaway here is that in order to fulfill the recurring socio-rhetorical need of this genre of team charters, you should have content, words that accomplish the things in that left column. Those words can be filtered formally through headings that appear in that right column. And so a good starting place is to open up a doc and have in these formal features and then start adding the content as needed. And so just by doing this as a group, you'll start to work on a lot of team processes and answering questions and solving problems ahead of time so that you can actually have productive teams for the rest of your teaming session. All right, so now let's take a look at best practices, and there are 3. They're listed there in yellow. All right, so they are plan on planning, establish norms, and troubleshooting. Let's start by looking at plan on planning. So teams get first assembled, they're all excited. It can be a mistake to use that excitement to jump straight into the content talking about the project. You can use that initial momentum to build the structure for the team so that when the course goes on, maybe you have finals are looming, you can rely on the structure to continue the teamwork processes and not just rely on motivation and initial momentum. So by using that initial momentum to build structure, you can set yourself up for success. One of my favorite quotes, failing to plan is planning to fail. So if there's no plan in place and issues arise down the road, you're going to have to deal with them then on the spot, and when you could have done this early on and had a fail-safe already built in. And so we also have discuss openly goals and objectives, get specific. Do you want an A? Are you okay with a B? Letting your team know that is going to help the team collectively decide, okay, so this person really wants an A. We're going to give them the lead for this aspect. Or maybe this person is a specialist in Y, so we're going to draw from them as we're working on Y together, and can have that kind of clear communication at the start versus when you're actually in the work and they say, well, actually, I've done this for 5 years and have built my own, so I could do that. Oh, that's news to us. I wish we knew that beforehand. So getting those things out early will help the team succeed, and the charter can be the place to put those things in writing. The other thing I'll say is when you plan on planning, it's also planning for issues that may arise, and having it in the charter can be the difference of me saying, hey Bob, I noticed that you didn't meet the deadline we kind of had set as a team in the charter. Is there any way you could let me know when you plan to get to this, or if you need help, we can pass it off to Charlotte. Versus if you don't have a team charter, now it's very me versus you. Hey Bob, why didn't you do that project? I thought you were going to do it. I thought you were going to do it. Versus it's in the charter, what happened here. There might be, you're basically outsourcing responsibility for calling out your teammate and reducing the kind of political tension that can exist in a team therein. So second best practice is to establish norms. So by what means and rules are you going to be communicating with each other? And then decide what lean and rich media you'll use. That just means which are you going to use, email, chat, video conferencing, that would be rich media, live and video, or lean media, email, asynchronous, no video, are you going to use to communicate? And then state your leadership style if warranted, who that leader is. So this is important because you don't want to have people talking on WhatsApp, Slack, and Facebook Messenger, if that's still a thing. I don't know if WhatsApp took it over, but and email. And so it's best to have kind of one channel for communication to happen and have it designated at the beginning so that you have a go-to place to communicate with one another. The third best practice, kind of previewed it for you in best practice 1, is to troubleshoot. And so with troubleshooting, decide before it happens and get buy-in from everyone. This will greatly reduce any sorts of issues down the road. And so questions you need to answer as a group are, what will you do if someone turns in poor quality work? What's the procedure for that? And how will that determination be made? And you can already start to see, I hope, that by answering this as a theoretical question, it reduces kind of the blame when it happens as a practical issue. So if you decide as a hypothetical, okay, if someone turns in poor quality work, here's how we'll deal with it, and you kind of set out a rational procedure, when poor quality work is identified, there's already a procedure built in place. You don't need to troubleshoot what to do about it or how to approach the person. It's been written in the charter. You all agreed upon it 3 weeks ago. And then same thing for what will you do if someone misses a deadline or a meeting. Okay, so another part of this lecture, I always like to draw in voices outside of my own, so it gives me some more credibility here. So in the last mini module you heard from Scotty in kind of a problem scenario for when you do divide and conquer collaborative writing. Now I'd like to show a best case scenario from another interview I did. And this is from an individual who worked at the same biotech company, only she was much higher up in the ladder. She had been with the company for a long time. And unprompted, she started talking about team charters. And so I have written up here on the slide, team charters have best practices, those 3 I just ran through, but use of the genre itself is a best practice. So now you're seeing why I taught that word genre, because it's fulfilling that recurring social rhetorical need is best practice for teamwork. Without it, you're not doing best team practice itself. So listen, her name for our purposes, we'll call her Gwen. Listen to Gwen talk about how, 1, the charter functions, 2, how integral the charter is to the company, and 3, how it's used to onboard new hires. So you might be seeing these wherever you go next. All right, and so this one's a little bit longer than the Scotty interview, so take a listen as the interview proceeds, and then I'll pick up afterwards.
But the rule is, once you walk out of the room, you support the team's decision, and you're on board with it.
And how do you communicate that to the objector?
The people, when we establish a team, we have a team charter in place, cool. And within that team charter, it states, we will try to make decisions on a unanimous level, but if it's not unanimous, that all team members accept the fact.
I see.
This is the decision, and you can moan, grumble, complain all you want to, as long as you're within the confines of the room to the team. But when you leave, you back the team decision. There's no grumbling outside of the room.
I like that.
Yeah.
So tell me more about the team charter. That's really interesting. Do you facilitate it?
Yes. Yeah. So typically, most of our teams have like charters. So.
Is that industry-wide or company-wide?
Yeah, it's company-wide.
Okay.
A lot of teams will have charters put in place that sets about kind of like ground rules. So it could be something as simple as how often the team will meet, to how we'll settle disagreements and come together as a team, how we will make decisions, what we'll do for fun activities, how we'll celebrate each other, how long meetings will last. when you set the agenda for the meetings, how early, when will the minutes and decisions be distributed to the team. So every year we revisit that team charter with the team members as a reminder. If we see team members acting outside of the charter, we revisit it more often. Because one of ours is that for my team, we have come together and aligned that any presentation on that project, let's say, that goes outside the team, the core team gets to see and review it and make sure it's in line with the whole team's thinking.
Oh, wow.
So that we know what's being presented to the other parts of the company.
Okay.
And not blindsided. Because not always is everyone in every meeting, per se, because there's a lot of sub-meetings. And we just want to make sure that we're all in agreement with what's being presented to our other leadership team. And so have someone who kind of goes rogue and puts a presentation together and presents to a different line, and the team hears about it. We remind them. The charter states all presentations funnel through us for a quick review before it goes out to make sure we're aligned on the messaging that's going through the company.
Will you use that language? You'll say, that's awesome. And what kind of response do you get when you have used that?
When we've had to remind people, they go, I was in a hurry. Had a deadline. I forgot I should have it reviewed. Yes, I understand. I won't do it again. I'll try to remember next time, type of thing.
I see.
Yeah.
So it's pretty collegial,
yeah.
But also they get the point too.
Yes, exactly.
So you find the charter is pretty valuable for your team?
Yes.
That's awesome. What other, so it's kind of an annual review for the charters. Does it show up elsewhere throughout the year, outside of the formation process, which you also talked about?
Yeah, so we do the formation, and then, like I said, we have a lot of new team members, because working in this company, you can have a lot. We definitely review it when we have new team members come on board.
Okay, as a training tool almost?
Yeah. So the one team I'm thinking of right now, we've had different stages of the program, different people come on, and so whenever we have to not only bring them up, to kind of give them the background and the history of the program and where we want to go, but we also kind of review the charter and say, these are our expectations of you as a team member.
Wow. That sounds really helpful.
I hope it is.
Yeah. All right, so there's a lot packed in that interview, but I think what Gwen offered was a demonstration of how the best practices actually manifest in her company and in her teams as they're doing kind of complex work across. They have a kind of matrix style organization at their company, and so team charters help them manage their workload and continue to be competitive in the marketplace. So for your kind of takeaway from that interview, look forward thinking to see, I might have to work with team charters in the workplace, especially as I'm being onboarded to a team, but also it can be a practical way that business teams have dealt with issues that come up in team dynamics. And the part that I really like about the interview was how Gwen described the exchange between when she referenced the team charter to keep kind of someone in line, and they were able to save face and say, I won't do it again. And with the team charter, it really allows that conversation to happen in that document as opposed to between two people. So that's one benefit on an interpersonal level. We also have benefits on a productivity level as well as a employability level.
The rule is.
So the three best practices, as I've talked about them, if you're going to do three things, have these three things. Do you have a clearly defined objective that was discussed and agreed upon by the team? Have you established clear communication norms and boundaries? And finally, is there a clear method or methods for handling issues that may arise? And I would say, including but not limited to poor quality work and missed deadline. So just 2 slides left here. This is that one from the beginning, team charters at the center of it all. The point is you're using this document throughout your teaming session to integrate methods of collaborative writing, methods for leadership, as well as maybe things you've picked up from CollabU into this centralized team charter that keeps your team online, and actually I found they let you, there takes a lot of pressure off to manage other people. You can trust them more because you spent the time in the team charter, and the work gets done in a higher quality fashion. You're more proud of the work. The team is more cohesive because a lot of that planning has been done through the team charter in a formal way. So I have here let's look at some examples here, and then here's people looking at various devices at the team charter. At least that's what I had in my mind. So I'm just going to pause my recording quick while I open those videos, and I'll resume when I get everything open. All right, so the link you'll have on Canvas will take you to this website, and it should take you straight to the teaching and pedagogy link, which is the only thing you'll need. And you can scroll down, and the collaborative writing lecture, I have a modified, smaller version PDF of those slides if you need to reference it. But for team charters, you'll probably be more interested in seeing the examples. So there's been a lot of talk, best practices, what do professionals do, and so on, as well as a template. So let me walk through each of these for you, and then I will end the lecture after I've talked through those. All right, so first thing, if you click on the best practices, it will take you to a slide deck. It has the same information, only reduced, smaller amount that you can refer to. I would pay particular attention to the last slide, charter best practices, those questions to get you started. Just make sure you have the bare minimum for an effective team charter. So the other two, you have two samples from student work from prior courses I taught, so you can actually see what a charter looks like. And all right, so you can look through these on your own. I'm going to go through Team Charter Sample B just to point out one thing that may be useful to you. So you can see they've agreed upon an objective together. The team name was written in there. It's been redacted along with the student names. Strengths, goals for the projects, and potential obstacles. So Collab U can be very informative for filling out this table on your end. They lay out how they're going to communicate. They have their timeline with deliverables, so everyone knows what they are. And then here you can see it's a whole page on how to deal with late work, how to deal with poor quality work, absences, timelines, and if a conflict is found within their team. So this can be helpful for you to work on together, as well as they spent some time talking about boundaries. So they have this extra heading on operations and leadership. I'll go quickly through the other example as we go through. But what I wanted to point out was that resources and support by way of links. And so I would also include and encourage you to make sure you have this feature in your charter as well, even though it wasn't part of that 3 things you should have slide. I think it's an easy thing to include, and it can have a lot of benefit because it's no one's emailing you and saying where's this, where's that. It's already on the charter, and if you make it a live charter like on Google Doc, live meaning it's constantly added and changed, you can add stuff as you create new content. So this is example A, just running through some things. So they have norms in terms of communication, troubleshooting guidelines, and then they have it signed by each member on the team. That's a nice feature so that you can get buy-in from everybody as you're going through the work. So they have a different kind of setup for strengths and goals for projects. I think I like this one a bit more, strengths, goals, but also maybe things giving, previewing for your team, hey, I might have some issues with time zone differences. Also, I have 32 midterms, and so I'll be stressed at this point in the year. So those are the examples, as well as the slide here. This next button here, template, I get you'll want the template to start, but if you're encouraged, feel free to start from scratch because you'll get more work out of deciding together what features, what formal elements of the genre you want to include as a team, because it will be more based in your needs. What do we need, team, to include in this charter? And then you get feedback and put that in. But if you want to start with the template, do so, but just remember to add on to it as needed. Don't take the template as the one and only way to go here. So let's open this up, and I'll put it in focus mode. So what the template is going to look like is just something I wrote for you. Objective, you kind of fill in wherever there's italicized text. There's the table already made. Communication norms, deliverables, and a series of questions that you can work through as a team to get you started. And again, use the template, but also think about what other headings you want as a team that can kind of make this charter fulfill your own needs there. So I hope this was helpful for all of you. And again, the invitation to email me if you have any questions or run into any issues. And other than that, best of luck as you start your projects on teams. Remember, layered approach and team charters is going to be two things you can do that's really going to make the difference between a quality team experience and a high quality final product. All right, take care. Goodbye, everybody.